We're in a series calling Looking Back in Order to Go Forward, because sometimes that's just what God wants us to do. Of course, we can't live in the past, but it's good to turn around and get a sneak peek, what we've been through, because that sort of helps us put our present into context. And often in Scripture, God says, okay, remember when I did this? That's when he's saying, look back, and you'll see how I was faithful, how I led you when you didn't have any idea what's going to happen next, and what does this next new season hold for you? Take a look back, just to remind you I've been there, and I still have you. So what we're going to do today is just take a moment to look back, and I want to ask you this question to ponder. Why does Church by the Sea exist?
Reach the beach.
All right, there you go. I think if we all had to answer that question, we probably would have some different answers. Like, what's the point of church? And so if you don't go here, let me ask you that. What's the point of your church? Why? What's your purpose? Like, why do you exist? For some of us, we've been going to church for a long time. And even if it's easy to get into a routine, isn't it? You just go on autopilot. And for some of us, we've been doing this so long, we just wake up automatically at a certain time on Sunday morning, and we don't even think what I'm going to wear. We just do it. We just sort of have our routine, and Sunday morning we go to church because it's what we do. But I think it's important, as part of we looking back, we remind ourselves, what is the purpose of a church? Any group of people that get together, you have to make sure that there's a purpose, that we have the same purpose. Hey, you've been certainly somewhere where you got different people with different expectations, right? That's why some of you on your second or third marriage. That was a joke, okay? Hello, have you ever been in a relationship where someone's thinking, well, we got to do this, and you're going, no, we got to do this. And both the directions can be great. They can be good. But relationships don't work well when we continually pull against each other. And so whether you're an organization, a civic organization, or a nonprofit, or whatever, even a business, you got to make sure you're here for the same reasons, right? Or else it's just frustration, aggravation, and sometimes even worse, the end of a relationship. So for us, what's the purpose of church? And specifically, I want to look at Church by the Sea this morning. If you're from a different church, there's still application, because here's why. A church is different than a business or any other group or organization. If you start a group, you get to pick the rules. Well, you get to determine what's the point, what's the purpose, what's the mission, like what are we all about? You get to define that. Here's the thing, Jesus started the church, not a pastor, not a church council or deacons or elders or any other group. It's Jesus. And so because of that, when we want to know, like, why do I go to church? And what's the purpose of Church by the Sea or whatever church you go to? We have to go to Jesus for this, because it's his church. And regardless of who the earthly leaders are, you know what? Jesus has promised to be the one to provide for the church and protect the church. And if someone tries to hijack that, they got to deal with him. God is really good at taking care of himself and his people. So I want to quickly look at, what's the purpose of us? What does Jesus say is intentional and purpose? So if you would, join me in our notes. You'll see there, Matthew 22. And if you have a pen, pull it out. I got a couple fill in the blanks for you. Matthew 22. Jesus speaking, and let me give you the context here. Jesus is being set up. The attempt is to set him up, because there's, at this time, Roman Empire, they control Israel and a lot of the other countries at this time, okay? And the only thing the Roman government cares is, give me your taxes and don't cause a problem. Besides that, they don't really care what you do. They just don't want troublemaker, and they want the tax money. And so they have the Roman government there and set up and established. But in Israel, and specifically Jerusalem, there's the temple, the Jewish leadership, that they're in charge of the communities, the neighborhoods, and the temple, and some of these other organizations. And they're not there just not making sure that you don't cause a problem. They're there to make sure that you observe the Sabbath, that you do what the law says to do. And the Roman government, they don't care what you do. They don't care if you observe a Sabbath or sacrifice a bull or cow, or they don't care. They just want your money and don't cause a problem. And so in the Israel or Jewish system, you have Pharisees, or they're like judges. They're the ones that determine right and wrong and how laws should be applied. But then there's also scribes. They're more like attorneys, and they work hand in hand with the Pharisees. And so what is happening here is there's a big group of people. It's a public area, and they're trying to trick Jesus because they want to set him up. If they can get him to do something publicly that's, they can prove is wrong according to the law or the Torah or the scripture that they have, then they can get him out of the way because he's beginning to have a following. So first, Pharisees come up and they try to set him up. Again, remember, they don't have video cameras here. So at this time, the best thing to do to incriminate Jesus is to get him to say something publicly. So they try to trick him. Doesn't work. Next, a scribe or one of the attorneys pulls up and he says, again, trying to trick Jesus into a question. Doesn't work. And then the third one is here, what we're going to read about. This is where one of the Pharisees, again, one of the judges here, he asks a question. And look what he says in verse 36. Teacher or rabbi, which command of the law is the greatest? Now, that's a brilliant setup. Because think about it. Let's not even deal with the whole Old Testament. Let's just deal with the 10 Commandments. If they're asking Jesus, what's the most important one? What if he said, well, it's to love God? Or let's go back to, let's say, observe the Sabbath, right? Or not have any other idols. Whatever one Jesus would pick, they could go, well, what about this one? Are you saying it's not important? Again, that's what they're trying to do is just simply, and they don't even have to be true. They're just trying to set him up. So Jesus replies this in verse 37. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your mind. Which that's not even one of the 10 Commandments. But he's saying this is what's most important, regardless. Well, verse 38. This is the greatest and the most important command. But then he says, to cover the rest of them, the second is like it. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. He says the law and the prophets, or the entire Old Testament writings I have, depends on these two, just these. So they try to trick him. But here's what we take away from this. If Jesus is saying this is what's most important, well, we should make that most important for us. And certainly as the church, God's people. So here's the fill in the blanks if you have a pen. If not, you'll remember it. Here's what we should remember. The purpose of the church, love God and love others. Pretty simple, right? Doesn't say smoke machines, laser lights, banging. And I'm not against that. I'm just saying at the core of whatever church you go to, loving God absolutely must be the heartbeat. And then the expression of it is to love others. Genuinely love. Okay, now, another passage that we get, I think the purpose of the church is from Matthew 28. Jesus' last words on the earth, right before he ascends into heaven. Now, you would think this would be pretty important if it's his last words, right? Here's what he says. Go. And now he's not saying go as a command. He's saying, but as you go, as you journey through life, as you journey through each season, make disciples of all nations. See, that's the primary verb there in this passage. As you go through life, as you go about your business, as you journey, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I've commanded you. And remember, I am with you always. It says, even to the end of the age. So, the summary, make disciples. And of course, he tells us how to do that, teaching, baptizing. So there's different parts. Now, here's what I think is important for us to see. The church doesn't get to determine what our mission is or what our purpose is. Jesus does. And so a great summary is love God, love others, make disciples. We got to be about that. Whether you're a Lutheran, Methodist, it doesn't matter what your background is or your tradition. Love God, love others, and make disciples. And here's the thing, it's going to change in different seasons of life and different cultures. If you were a part of church world in the 1970s, you remember the bus ministry? Anyone? That was huge, okay? If you want to grow a church, get a bus ministry. That was made really popular in Virginia. And man, people saw this one church just sort of grow. You get a couple buses, you can grow a church. Why? Because you're going to get the people and bringing them in. Now think about this though. That was a different time. In the 70s, you remember the gas shortage? When all of a sudden gas got to $1 a gallon? I remember seeing that. I was like in 8th grade going, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. How? It just like doubled all of a sudden in just a few days. Oh, it's horrible. And there were gas lines everywhere. And, I didn't have a clue as to really what's going on. But even I figured out from listening to Walter Cronkite, this is bad, right? So what's a great solution? If that's an obstacle in your culture, get a bus. I'll take a bus. I don't have to pay for the gas. Right? And then think about it. If dad works at the factory all night long or third shift and he's sleeping and mom is there to help take care of him or the farm or whatever, then it's super easy. Get your kids on the bus. You don't have to take them. They just go. And so it was a great strategy, again, in a time, especially in areas where it was more rural. Now, does that mean we should get a bus ministry today? No. It was really good first service because we had a big tour bus. Like 60 people got off a bus and we're here for the first service. So I had to watch how I phrase this. But we're glad for buses. But we don't need to go buy a bus because 99.9% of the people in our area, transportation is not a problem. They can get here. They have other issues that are keeping them from coming here. So again, here's the thing. God determines the purpose. But wisdom from the church's leaders and the culture determine how we apply these truths. That make sense? God determines the purpose and the mission, but each culture, each era, each season, like every place is different. And so we as leadership need to determine how is it going to be lived out here. Again, it changes. Times change, and people do as well. So I say all that to say, we need to look back before we go forward. So let's do that. I'd like to share a little bit about what God has done. And again, God determines the mission. We have to be wise when we try to figure out how do we apply this or live it out. And I just want to show you what God has done this last year. I got some pictures we're going to show you. So it's fun slideshow today, okay? It's like show and tell. Let's see the first picture. This is Pastor Chris and Katie. Yay, 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 yay. Now, for those of you who are part of the home team, especially if you came to the 9:30 service, you remember what life was like before they came? We played like CDs or MP3 files of hymns. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. And what's so funny is we never knew when the music was going to start. I'd be in the middle of a prayer, and all of a sudden, this organ would kick on, and we're going, there's not even anyone over here, it was like a ghost was here. Or at the time, we'd say, okay, it's now, let's stand for the hymn, whatever, and we're waiting, and we're going, oh, God. It's a good thing we don't have guns over here, right? It was just so bad. And again, part of that was equipment. Just lots of things. So Pastor Chris and Katie, you guys bless us. Thank you for being here. Katie, you are such a wonderful helpmate to your husband who is so disorganized. And no, I'm teasing. You bless us. Thank you for all that you do, for being here, for practices and every service. And because we didn't hire her, we hired Chris, but she's a godly wife, and she's going to make sure he does the right thing. So, and Chris, thank you for all. Not many people can pull off leading a traditional service and choirs and notes and all this, and deal with these contemporary guitar guys. We love you guys, and we're a better church family because of you. Thank you for being here. And Chris, one last thing. You're a godly man, and your leadership is of God. And I know you revere him. You sacrifice for others and your family, and I recognize that, man. You bless us. Thank you. Let me show you the next picture here. This is our buddy Jazz. To you, if he's just a face, let me tell you, he's got such a great story. First of all, we had a guy who was here that oversaw the buildings and grounds, and man, bless his heart. He just couldn't even walk. He was just in really bad shape. And so we were in need of someone that could come in and really take care of our buildings, because they needed much attention. Still do, but so much has happened. And this guy, he's like MacGyver. You give him a paper clip and duct tape, and he'll make it work. And this guy has touched everything on this campus. I think every door I know has been fixed, if not once, maybe 18 times, depending on the lock. And he's just amazing. And to know his story, where he was and where he is now. And by the way, that's not his wife in the picture, but it is his girlfriend. So it's Miss Barbara. Can we see the next picture? This is Jeff Jansen and Nancy Jansen. Again, a new hire. He oversees our video and sound and streaming and all stuff technical. And, man, you probably only know him, because he's the guy with the iPad that's walking around. You're going, who is that cat? Oh, there he is. There he is, right there. And for some of you, the only time you even care about him is when there's some kind of feedback or sound issue going on, right? Where is that guy? He's got to be doing something. But Jeff, thank you for what you do. You came in. We don't even know what half the wires go to with what we walked into, and we're figuring out slowly and surely, and been able to add. And you bless us. So thank you for what you do. I want to show you another picture. And this is Pastor Johnny, our youth guy, and his Sue Ellen. Let's clap. That's his wife, Sue Ellen, and their little baby, Zoe, who they're in the back corner, if you can see him over there. And let me tell you now, Johnny's been in here for almost 3 years now. So he's not new, but he does have a new role in that, some of us just think of him as he's just a youth pastor. And that's sort of been the area where he's focused on. But just this year, we're bringing him on more. And he's not just the youth guy now. He's really stepping in as an associate pastor. And I want you to know that. He's a pastor. He's not just a youth director or youth guy. Last year, he got licensed to the ministry. He graduated, got his bachelor's degree in ministry. He's working now on his master's degree. And our plans are to ordain him this year. And yeah, that's a big deal. So we're excited because, we as a church family just get to be a part of this. And we're the ones that are going to receive from it as well. Johnny is stepping into, he's still continued youth, but he's stepping into more of a pastoral role and going to help with communication, like the bulletin and social media and some of these other things, to make sure that we're getting the word out of some of our events and the things that we need to. And then also leadership to helping people make sure that when guests come, they get connected. Because, our whole process here is when we have a first-time guest, we need to treat them as a gift from God. Like God gave us this person, and we got to be good stewards of them. Make sure that we present to them opportunities where if they want to follow the Lord or investigate the faith, we give them next steps so they can continue. Because our hope is that everyone goes from first-time guests to a generous, committed member here at Church by the Sea, or wherever God would lead them. But our goal is to help them become disciples, right? And so Johnny's going to help in this process. So, neat stuff happening here, and that's just some of the stuff. Let me show you some other things. Here are some of the different ministries that we have. Let's go to the next picture. This is our women's ministry. That was the very first night that they met. And that's a special group. And ladies, I want to encourage you, tomorrow night at 6:30, you need to come. And it was just evident. Whenever our ladies get together and they share, man, you just feel it. God is at work here. And our goal is not just to have you go through a study or have you learn something, but it's to have you be challenged to grow as a new disciple or a deeper disciple. And that's what these ladies do. It's a really special group. Next picture. This is our men's group, and we started this just last year. And really excited about what we have going on this Thursday night with some new friends coming in, and they're going to help lead this and give direction and show us a new model for men's ministry. There's a group of guys here, and again, we're not just trying to go through a study. We're trying to grow as disciples. And so I hope you'll come try us out Thursday night at 6:30. And it's great to see our men bonding and our ladies bonding. That's a healthy church. Let's see the next picture, some of the different ministries. This is Pastor Asif, right there, and his family. One of the things that our church started just the very end of last year was we're going to be intentional about giving to missions. And though in the past we've had some monies that went to missions, sometimes some of that money wasn't to missions, but it was more to benevolence. There'd be needs that they saw, and they gave it to that. But we do have that, and we do that. But we're stepping up and being very intentional about growing in our giving to missions. Missions meaning it's someone who is going to a different people group and sharing the good news, like about God. And it's called evangelism, which is a good word, by the way. Evangelism means good news. And the good news is you know what? God's not trying to get you to be good. He died to save your sins. Embrace him. That's the good news, is trust him. And Asif is local because he deals with high school students, and he's challenging these guys and ladies to step up to be disciples. Now, also, he goes to different countries. Last summer, he was in Italy, and he and his wife and his girls, they went to Italy, and they did a sports camp. Like, how cool is that? And then Asif is always at the Olympics. So we're blessed in that, you know what, even in our initial gift of giving towards missions, we're able to give to Pastor Asif. And then let's see the next picture here. This is Amanda, and she just was up here leading worship. These are all her children. And these are students or kids from Uganda. She goes over there, and her heart is to help this orphanage, and then the ladies that are over there. And she actually started her own nonprofit organization, a mission organization. And so we get to be a part of that. And so again, we are able to give her some resources, some of our initial mission money. And matter of fact, she's leaving in a couple weeks to go over there. And some of the ladies are even collecting some clothing to take over there and other things. So if you can help, Amanda can tell you what they're looking for. But they need old suitcases. They're going to fill them with clothing, and they're going to take them over there and leave them and give them to the kids in the different villages. So it's just a great, great thing. And you'll hear more about that. But anyway, talk to Amanda. But again, that was just another mission thing that, again, we're being intentional to make sure that our ministry doesn't just stay here in Madeira Beach, because Jesus said, go into all the world, make disciples of all the groups, people groups or nations. And so we're actually doing that now. And then we had another guy, David Wyatt, who spoke here a couple weeks ago. He's stationed or headquartered in Orlando, and he's going to Europe and Africa and Middle East and bringing the Jesus film, and he's taking mission trips over there to these different places. So again, this is just our initial step, but it's the right step. And then this year we'll begin to define what missions should look like for us at Church by the Sea, and continue every year to increase it, because again, we got to love God, we got to love others, and we got to make disciples, and not just in Madeira Beach, but into the ends of the earth. And so we feel like we're doing that, at least beginning that. The next picture, if I may. This is our group that we got to baptize at the beach last July. 15 people. And you know what? It was such a great time. Let's see the next picture if we can. There we are, some of us at the beach, and we got to sing. We had like 80 people here. We ate some hot dogs, and then went up to the beach. We introduced the people here getting baptized, walked right across the street, and sang a few songs, and it was just great. We even had one of our neighbors follow us down and join us, and then he even got in line to get baptized. Can you believe that? Isn't that awesome? We're like, what are you doing here? Well, come on, and it was great. Baptism is important because it's like the initiation. It's going public about your faith in Jesus, about having a relationship with him. Again, we didn't describe it or define it that way, but the Bible does. And so there's something powerful about ceremony, and baptism is just a really special moment. Matter of fact, we were going to do it again just a few weeks later, but of course, if you know the red tide area, that kept us from doing that. So we already have like another 15 people that are ready to be baptized, and as soon as that water gets out of the 60s, we're going to do it. So we're thinking May, but maybe some of you in here need to be baptized. Man, it's just a wonderful time. Let's have the next picture. This is our Easter egg hunt we did. And we do it every year at Millennial Park here in Seminole, just go across the bridge. And we had the biggest crowd we've ever had. And again, free food, free candy, free egg hunt, all this for the kids. We don't ask for anything. We just want to bless our community. And then also, we don't have a picture of it, but we have a trunk or treat here every Halloween time. And again, this year, largest crowd ever. Again, it's just something free. We just wanted to love and bless the community. That's what the church should be. You know, I always believe this, and I've always said this. It's a crime if a community can ignore a church. We should be so involved. They can't ignore us. So we're doing our part. We're just a little church here, but we're, trusting God to make a difference. Let's see the next picture. It's our fellowships. Man, one of the things that was top of my list when I first came a little bit over a year and a half ago, right a year and a half ago, was fellowship. People are serving, they're doing things, but they don't know the people they're with. And sometimes they're so tired from serving, they don't like the people they're with. All right? And so I'm like, we gotta spend time together. That's so important. And man, our fellowships, we have church-wide fellowships, man, they've been growing. We average, instead of, somewhere around between 80 and 100. Like, that's just great. And FYI, we got to do something about that fellowship hall. So it's too small. Matter of fact, when we had our church Thanksgiving meal, we had 150 people in there. And then what's great is just like 3 days later, we had a community Thanksgiving meal. And it was we only invited people who are experiencing homelessness at this time. And, we had Mark, how many, Liz? 40 different people. We were able to bless them. It was so great. Some even came in late. We already putting the food up. Because it was for a certain time. And we only gave out invitations to people who somehow were connected to the office or came by to get food. And I remember one lady came in and she's crying. She's like, is it too late? Is it too late? I missed my bus and, all these things. And she's doing everything to get here because she wanted to have a Thanksgiving meal. And of course, Liz and some of the other volunteers, she said, man, come in, sit down. And we gave her 2 plates to go and let her eat there. It was so sweet. We had one guy who, one of our volunteers was praying with him. And she hugged him afterwards. And you know what he said? He said, I hadn't been hugged in 10 years. That's the church. That's some of the things that have gone on this year. Can we see the next picture? That's Easter morning at the sunrise service at Johns Pass, 7 o'clock. We conservatively say there's 600 people there. One person counted over 700, and then they just lost count. It's like trying to count ants as everyone's moving. But, man, it was just fantastic. 600 people, and then we had 2 more services here. We got people in our community. They won't go to church any other time except for a couple times a year. And they want church by the sea is their church. How do we help make them disciples? That's our heart. Look at the next picture here. This is from this Christmas Eve at the 4 o'clock service. Can you see how far back? Don't tell the fire marshal, but man, we had 350 people in here, we guess, that we counted. And then let's see the next picture. This is the 11 o'clock when everyone's supposed to be in bed. And look at these people are here. Just great. Again, what I love is when I'm out at Publix or somewhere and People talk about Church by the Sea. Their mom was married here, or their aunt, or they were, or they've been here for a funeral. Like, for many, they still think of us as their church, even though they don't know if they know Christ. Matter of fact, what was funny is 11 o'clock service starts at 11, right? We got here, we roll in, it's like 10:15. Pastor Chris and Jeff and I were here, we're setting up, and there's like 4 or 5 people out here on their bicycles. And we're like, church is starting, right? We're like, yeah, it's pretty soon. It's a little early, but yeah, we opened the door, they came on in, and man, they were awesome. They were encouraging. I go to Publix last week to get some fried chicken. I walk up, she's like, hey, Pastor. I'm like, hello. She's like, I was at your church for Christmas Eve. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember. Right there they were, Haven't seen her since or before. But now I know where she works. I love it, I just love it. God's just doing some really cool things. Let me show you a couple more pictures here. One more. Let's hit the picture of Jazz. This is our buddy breaking every FICA law and whatever, FHCC, whatever. It's godly to take care of our buildings. I never used to really think of it like, buildings. We don't need to put an emphasis on that, but you know what? We do. There's a whole book in the Bible called Nehemiah, and it's about building a wall. This is before Trump was president. All right? But it was calling people back to Jerusalem who they'd been because of the Babylon Empire, pulled them away in different countries, pull them back. There's another, you read the book of Daniel. It's all about these people. Esther, during this time, they're going back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple and rebuild the wall. It's a godly thing to take care of our facilities. We got to be good stewards. And this place needed it. Still does. A lot of work. We got to paint this year. The vision for the church, paint it. They're real godly. But we got to take care of it. And we've done so much. We've done roofs and ACs. We'll probably have more to do. Here's a picture of when we had to tent for termites. Like, that's a lot of canvas cloths there. You know what I'm saying? We had to do this building, and because it's connected to the fellowship hall, this is considered one building in termite size. Okay? Don't get ahead of me. Hang on. Anyway, so we had to pay for that. And by the way, that costs more than going to Chipotle for a lunch to tent a building. Let me tell you. But praise God, we had money. Like, we were able to do these huge, big things. Let's go to the next one. Another thing we did is we started some renovation over in the children's area, in that hallway here to the fellowship hall. And one of the things that we had some parents and other people do is go over there and write down prayers and names of their children and grandchildren. And then we wrote this in on the insulation part, and we drywalled over it and then painted. So those prayers are permanently in that place for the future generations that are going to be growing up and going through those halls, because they matter. It's not really about a wall, but it's about those little kids becoming growing disciples. And that's what we want to be, the heartbeat of who we are. And real quick, next picture. Here's some of our volunteers. Mark, painting it. We were getting after it. And we just really, it needs to look good. And for those of you, maybe you're way past your childbearing years. Here's one thing that is true for a church. There are 2 very important rooms when it comes to first-time guests. Number 1, ladies' bathroom. By the way, we need to change ours. It's coming, I pray. I'm praying about it. Second, children's rooms. They got to be clean. And here's what I promise you. We don't have fog machines and laser things over there for our kids, but here's what they have. They're going to hear the Word of God. They are going to be loved. And they're going to know that they're really special to Jesus. And you know what? That's all we can do. It's growing over there. It's just fantastic. Real quick here. All right, next picture. It's the landscaping. We had one of our neighbors who also goes to our church bought, a big dump truck load of pine bark. So he paid for it. But then he spent the next 2 weeks shoveling it all over the campus. How great is that? Next picture. We had to do a lot of cutting and just, again, making the campus look good because, you know what? You've been here for all your life. It doesn't matter to you. You know where to go. But for our guests, it matters. This is what this place looked like, the courtyard out here when I first arrived. Now look at it. See the next picture. Pretty big difference, right? Now, I'm not just anti-tree or anti-environment. We had to take down some trees. They were banging against the building, you know, and it looked like a jungle. Okay, here's the next slide there. This is what it used to look like. And then the next picture here. We opened up the welcome area, and look at those pavers. Aren't they beautiful out there? Someone in our church said, you know, this place would look better if we had some pavers. Wrote a check right there for pavers. How cool is that? You know why? She loves her church. And we've had that over and over and over. And God is just, it's just neat to see some of the revitalization happening here. Okay, next picture. This is our new soundboard, which also is this thing, the iPad. Notice all the musicians going, yeah. Man, that other one we had, a channel would go out, and then, just in the middle of service. And then as we're trying to find another channel to plug it into, it would mysteriously come back on. There were like ghosts in here doing different things. It was weird. Anyway, so we were, first we got speakers. Again, someone said, how much are they? Wrote a check right there. Took care of that. We've been able to get sound system. We got some new stuff. We're just trying to make, because people need to hear. People need to see. There's still more to go, but we're being good stewards. Let me see the next picture here. This is what happened this week. See that guy? There's a guy on a ladder up here because right along the very edge of our roof line, they ran one of the new cables, and it makes a huge difference. Huge difference. And here's what I love about it. The guy who did this, just like the guy who did our trees, they do this for a living and charges probably certainly a tenth of what some of the other guys, were asking. Man, we're so blessed. God is just taking such good care of us. One other picture. We'll just show this. See, we got our new logo. Here's why I love it. When I got here, just a little bit over a year ago, man, we had about 18 different logos, different fonts, different colors. We had teal, we had blue, we had black, we had red, we had yellow. It was crazy. And we just say, okay, we got to make this one. And again, someone took care of the sign for us. How cool is that? We're going to end it now. But there's still more to go. Now, we'll just make this part 2 at some point. Come back next week, though. My buddy's going to be here talking about marriage. But here's what I want you to take away. As Christians, God determines the purpose and mission, what your life is all about. Now, you might be a mailman. You might be a stockman. Whatever. Your mission is to make disciples. Love God, love others, and make disciples wherever you go. And for us as a church, that's always the mission and the purpose of why we're here. Love God, love others, and make disciples. Our wisdom that we are praying for God to lead and to bless is that people will see the evidence of Christ and that will know how is the Lord leading us. So, a couple things about looking back this last year. Do you know? They took an average attendance of how many people are here every Sunday, and they averaged it out. 2 years ago, let me just say, last year, we're up 25% in attendance. Isn't that amazing? I know some of you don't know anything about church statistics and all this. As a church plant, if you're brand new, that's pretty good. If you're an established church and you're revitalizing it, that is huge. So God is blessing us. And here's another really cool thing. We spent more than our budget, but we received over $24,000 more than we spent. That's yay, God. And here's what's really cool. That doesn't include any of the special gifts, like the pavers or some of these other gifts. That was just in the offering. And you know why? God's doing something here. And it's just... I wanted to give you some snapshots let us look back so you can see different glimpses and the fingerprints of God in the story that he's writing here at Church by the Sea. It doesn't stop. We're looking forward. And the vision for next year is basically do more. Let's see what God's going to do. But we're following him. But we'll probably get to that in a couple weeks. Please bow your heads.